I would like to introduce you to Siona O Connell, who we have, Siona and I have known each other for a while, and it's so lovely, like you said, to see you again, Siona. But Siona has done such important work as a scholar, as a curator, and as a filmmaker. We were talking earlier today about not just doing scholarship, not just sitting in the academy, but various ways of actually being active in the world. And I think you really embody that. Sheena has done like I said, a lot of work in around obviously the Spring Queen, but also about forced removals, land rights, legacies of apartheid, and spatial discriminatory spatial design in the city of Cape Town. She's currently, unfortunately, in the University of Pretoria. We lost Sheena to the north at some point in Cape Town. But she will have a conversation with Jade, Nair. Jade is one of the team members of Under Cover of Darkness, also recent graduate from the Center for Curating the Archive at UCT. Thereafter, we're going to hear from Dr. Erika de Greef. Erika is a fashion researcher and has particular interest in uniforms, and also the kinds of identity intersections with clothing industry and things around uniforms. Lastly, we have to finish the day off, we have Queasy, performance artist, who is going to also enter into the conversation around the notions of identity, clothing, and as I indicated at the beginning, the importance of these issues particularly in the Cape Town setting, and the Cape Town economics. So I'm going to hand over to you, Jade and Nina. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Carine. Hi, Siona.
Hi, Jade.
Thank you for joining us and for letting us share your film. This was the very first project that I worked on with you way back in 2013 when I joined as your assistant, and it resonated so deeply for me in a number of ways. My mother was involved in the trade unions. I'm from the Cape Flats, and Spring Queen is so ingrained in the culture there. And also just being a lover of fashion, being able to see the back room of the industry was incredible for me, and was so pivotal in my understanding of the importance of this kind of work. So if you could just tell us how you came to shape this project and what is your connection to clothing and textile workers?
Firstly, I need to commend you, Jade, Carine, and Nina for a phenomenal event. I think it's the benchmark of events, and I've been to a few the last week or so. Thank you very much. It was really good for me to watch this film again, because it took me back to us making this film and this young Jade, and us going to Sakta and talking about your mom working there. And I come to it, I mean, obviously I'm a lot older than you, but it was interesting how this project spanned the generation, spanned the time between us, and it spanned time and space in ways that I think speaks to the now in really important ways. So my background, various family members were involved in the clothing trade. I still have uncles and aunts and nieces and nephews in the clothing trade, and we grew up shopping at factory shops. We were taught to look out for the stickers that showed, they showed the floors and so forth. And I was quite astonished that even though I had heard about Spring Queen and factory shops as part of my kind of life experience and that of my family's, it really didn't ring a bell to many Cape Townians. It seemed that this event that had been carrying on since the 70s, that gripped the Cape Flats, kind of disappeared. It wasn't even on the radar of the majority of of Cape Townians, and I'd argue South Africans as well. And especially in a country where, with our kind of past, I couldn't understand why Cape Townians weren't a little bit more interested in this. So I made this film when we did an exhibition through the clothing, the story of the clothing workers. But I think, in thinking about this conversation that we're having today, I'm angered and shocked at the same time at how little has changed. This film was made so many years ago, and I was looking up the figures. this was an industry that probably had about 200,000 women at one stage, and we just under 29,000. It's the second largest manufacturing industry in the Cape, and it's a contributor in large ways to, and has been, to the building of Cape Town and the Cape into this economic powerhouse that it is. And yet these are women who continue to be sidelined, who continue to sit on the edges and continue to sit on the periphery. And I look at this film now, and with less sense of the optimism that I had when I made it, that I thought, if we could just add one more factory, we could just do it, we would do it. And I think I'm overwhelmed by the weight of history. I was thinking of, this Human Rights Day and this Bill of Rights and this Freedom Charter that, this rights that we have been talking about. I mean, the Freedom Charter was, I think, drawn up in 1955, so that's 60 odd years ago. Why are we still having these conversations about 50% of our population being deemed as second-hand citizens? Why are we still having conversations about violence against women? Why do we still have homes on the Cape Flats that's headed by women in the clothing industry, supporting up to 9 people on their wages, and if they lose their job, they are made vulnerable yet again to violences and so forth? And I think we've gotten it completely wrong. Sorry, I'm going on a bit of a rant here. The anger that I'm feeling now, when all this promise that is held in those dresses, all these hopes and dreams of young women who want to make a difference, but who they are bogged down with this weight of a history that doesn't start in 48. I mean, as your symposium has shown today, this goes way back. And colored women in particular, bearing a weight of a history, of a colored history and of a slave history that is so much too often associated with shame. I was speaking at Tsong on Friday, and I said, unfortunately, South Africa hasn't reckoned with its slave past yet. The rest of us in South Africa, and I'm speaking now personally, I'm located in Cape Town, but I work at the University of Pretoria. The business of slavery is often thought about up there as something to do with the Cape. When in fact it is enmeshed in every social thread and political thread of the South African fabric. So kudos to you, Nina and Carine, for raising this and for raising it on such an important day.
Thank you, Sheena. Speaking about the weight of history, I wonder about the weight of responsibility you feel to represent these women's lives and lived experiences, and how do you negotiate that as an individual who can only do so much?
As you know, Jade, we've made several films over the years, and I think we have been ill-prepared for the work that we've done. I think the psychological damage that it has done to us, because on the one hand, we know both of us have never gone into these projects simply using folk as research statistics. We get their story and we duck it. We don't do that. So just as I was watching the film, I was texting Washila to say, look, Washila, you're back on TV. Because I think this has changed, Spring Queen changed the way I do research. These are not people who simply give me a story. I'm invested in them as much as they're invested in me. And that I don't think we are adequately trained for at the universities. We don't know I don't know what it's like to leave a story. So as a result, I have hundreds and hundreds of people who, in one sense, certainly enrich my life. But this inability that I feel, I'm hampered by how much I can actually do. Yeah, but I think for those of us who are interested in the lives of these women is to check every single clothing label that we buy. We're so concerned about what we eat. We can check something for the calories and the fat content and all this kind of stuff. We scrutinize these labels, but we don't do the same to clothing labels. And I'm not entirely convinced that the clothing trade can be revived, but I think the responsibility is on all of us to upskill these women, to invest in training, because I think that they are paying the cost of a ship that sailed into Cape Town in 1652, and they continued to pay the price every single day.
I have so many more questions for you. I'm going to give you a last one, but as Carine mentioned, much of your work is centered on the issue of land restitution and the legacy of forced removals in South Africa that is no doubt linked to Spring Queen through the lived reality of these women. Can you speak a bit about how this project, which constitutes, I just want to make it very clear that this is not just a film, but it constitutes a film, many exhibitions, and a digital archive, how it speaks to issues beyond clothing manufacturing and labor practices, that this is not just a project about clothing and clothing workers?
I think for me, it is a project of the imagination. And I think if we are, the business of the arts, where we imagine the human in all kinds of ways. We imagine asking questions. We imagine the kinds of answers that we should be looking for. I mean, the business of the arts is so entwined with the Bill of Rights, and so entwined with the rights to which we are all due, but I don't think we actually have in its fullest sense. So Spring Queen for me is more than just labor. It's more than just practices on the machine floor. It speaks to us about how we can imagine a way of being, if you can think about this fragmentary moment of freedom on the ramp, and it is fragmentary. It's there and gone within a camera flash. But in that moment, these are women who imagine themselves as anything else than what history has determined them to be. They are confident, they're resilient, they are free from that machine floor. And so for those of us as scholars and practitioners interested in this business of being human and what it means to be free, we need to try and look at this moment and extend that moment of freedom so that we understand that it is constantly changing, it is organic, and at this moment it's pretty much elusive.
Thank you so much, Sheena. I'm going to slip one more question in. In 2016, the legacy of forced removals, which itself is a legacy of slavery and colonialism, entered into the present when the pageant was moved from the Good Hope Centre in the CBD to Athlone Stadium. Can you maybe tell us about your first-hand experience of speaking to these women about how it made them feel and the impact on their lives?
I think, and Jade, we held several workshops and get-togethers with the Spring Queen participants outside of the pageant. And it's always astonishing to me when I'll do workshops around forced removals or ways of life with communities who are bearing the brunt of history, how little they know of history, how little they know of the impact of slavery in their day-to-day lives, that even though they may have surnames such as Apollos or Jan, February, March, that are clearly, that has a genealogy of slavery in it, how little they actually know about it. So they're living a life that has been scripted by a past of which they're not aware. So Spring Queen, those conversations, certainly through this project, has shifted that kind of focus. And of course, this move from the Good Hope Centre, which is on the edge of District 6, it's stone's throw from where the Ensign factory shop used to be. An Ensign, for those who know Cape Town, used to be, the overalls, so uniforms. They used to manufacture uniforms for the Defence Force, ironically. Truly ironic, these women used to be stitching this. This move from the Cape, from Good Hope Centre to Athlone, I think epitomized for me and for many a statement by the city of Cape Town saying, let's move it out of sight. This was, when Spring Queen came to Good Hope Centre, it kind of took over that whole strip. It was loud and vivacious, and it attracted really a significant crowd of people who came from the Cape Flats into the city. Now, of course, they don't have to do that. It is now, last year with COVID was the first time that it hasn't happened in decades. But notwithstanding that, it just hasn't had the same kind of texture and flavor being out in Athlone in November, because it's Jade, it's completely windy. It's cruel to have a pageant. It's cold and miserable. It's not enclosed. So I think it speaks to the disposability of lives. It speaks to how some lives are deemed human, and I think it speaks to a city that refuses to recognize some 27 years after 1994 that life has to be different.
Thank you so much, Sheena. We're going to catch up with you again later in the panel.